Hello, hello. So I am recording this, and we'll end up throwing this up on, I'll throw it on YouTube for other people who weren't able to hop on the call. But what I wanted to do with this is I saw that there's a large interest for especially women and just beginners to be able to start to understand about crypto and understand more about how you can start to feel comfortable and trust the technology behind it. Personally, myself, I have found a whole lot of freedom and empowerment through learning about finances, investing, personal budgeting, and crypto is one of those assets that we can learn about. And the number one tool that I found that leads from action, that begins with action, is through education. So the education process helps reduce our fear and in crypto and being uncertain with what goes on. And that starts with here. So I am designing these calls into smaller bite-sized pieces so that we can start to break down crypto and start to understand it, especially as women, so we don't have to rely on men or other people to be able to invest for us and manage our own money. So this will be a shorter type of course, a shorter call, but the idea is to get little nuggets and little pieces here so we can continue to build upon that knowledge. And so also this, for the record, this is not financial recommendations or how you should manage your money. Of course, there's risk with everything. And I'm actually not going to be talking about price. I'm going to be talking about technology, because crypto, blockchain, coins, all of these things are different pieces of technology that we want to understand before we invest so we can feel comfortable in what we are doing. So I will not be giving any financial advice, but instead educating about how and why crypto. So let's dive on in. Okay, so for a beginner's mindset, I broke it out into a few buckets, and today we are going to focus on these three. We're going to focus on what is crypto, why we have it, and what the use cases are. So then we can start to understand more about what problems it solves in the world, why it came to be, what has been built from it, and what is the utility going forward in the future. So, diving into it, what is crypto? Cryptocurrency is a digital and virtual currency that is secured by cryptography, which is a science. It's how computers are run, with zeros and ones, and you code everything through. And this form makes it nearly impossible to counterfeit or double spend. And so the counterfeiting and double spending is referring to how the transactions within a currency are shared across the network. So, for example, when you look at currency, like the currency you have today, you have your dollars, your rupiahs, and these are all government regulated. So you trust that the government has printed it. You know that you can get more, and by the amount that you have and the amount that a vendor asks for it, that is the amount, that is the value, and that is the worth of that currency. What makes cryptocurrency really unique is that you don't have that in-person interaction, obviously. It's all online and it's all done by code. And so how do you show your accounting of this person sends money to this person? And that is done through the blockchain, which we will go into very, very shortly. So remember that cryptocurrency is a digital currency that stores value and you can trade it. So the three aspects to crypto is understanding that it is a currency, number one. We're going to break down what decentralization versus centralization means. And lastly, blockchain. What is it? Why does it matter? And how does this help us understand what crypto is? Okay, diving into it. We're going to start off with the history of currency. And as we go into this stuff, remember, focus on the big picture. The reason that we're going into this beginner aspect is to be able to understand the big ideas of what we do and Like when you don't consider you spending dollars at the grocery store and exchanging those, you don't have to think about that because you already trust the currency. So now we're just trying to look at the big picture comparisons of how this relates over into our life. So, currency. Currency has always been a means of trade, and it has started off with the bartering system way back in the day, where we have been able to trade. For example, you could trade milk for eggs. If that's what your farm, if that's what you grew, then you were able to trade what you had to be able to get more things into your life to be able to cover your basic needs. Big difference with bartering is that there was not a big emphasis on building wealth at the time. And there's obviously a lot of points of friction in here that make bartering very difficult. You have to hold everything. Usually a lot of your goods were stuck on a certain time or expiration date. And so from bartering came the birth of gold, where gold was mined, it was harvested. There's a scarce amount of gold. You can only pick that up from whatever's in the ground and what's been mined out. And also there's a utility for gold. So you were able to turn that into jewelry. You were able to turn that into other means of building things because it's a metal. And it's a very strong metal too. So the properties of gold held within society that there was a value deemed behind it. And so people trusted gold to say, instead of carrying my 12 dozen eggs with me everywhere I go, I can now get a golden coin and be able still to trade that golden coin for that milk and get the milk to be able to feed my family. So the birth of gold adds convenience and adds layers to currency to make it more accessible for people. Next, we have government-issued currencies. Because as gold was really nice to be able to have, there still was that risk. If you carried it around and people knew that you were carrying it on you, then they could be out for your gold or worse, your blood, because they know that you have it on you. And back in the days, the wild, wild west, anything goes as long as they can get the gold. So government-issued currencies meant that now banks were opening. And you could store your currency, you could store your gold in these vaults, which are locking it up for you. Everyone else trusts that it's there. And instead of having to carry around your gold, you now get to carry around banknotes, checks, bills, saying you have this much money in your account and you are worth this much. So you could bring this bill, this bank check, this banknote to the market and say, hey guys, I have $3 in my account. Now I can get that gallon of milk because I have this in my account. And people trust the banks. And these banks are central entities because they're run by one person. So from having the banknotes, this is where we carry on to government-issued currencies, because the government then realized that they could print these dollars and open central banks to be able to manage it, and in turn this gave governments a lot more opportunity to be able to manage our funds and finances. So you can see how the layers of convenience start to evolve, and the layers of trust continue to evolve as well, because back in bartering we trusted the person that we were trading with that we would get our good. And for gold, we put trust in the golden coin. And then with government-issued currencies, we are putting the trust in the government, which are people and the laws, that everything is going to work out for us. And that the reason we are working day in and day out is to be paid in currency and still be able to use that. And so lastly, this brings us to fiat currencies. And a fiat currency is a government-issued currency that's not backed by any commodity. So the difference here is that the government-issued currencies up until 1971 were backed by gold or silver to some degree. The governments continually moved the percentages around to try to help their economic needs out. But in 1971, in the US, President Nixon decoupled from gold. So that meant that you no longer needed to, the banks no longer needed to hold any gold in their vaults. And now the dollar was simply put in terms of the value of whatever people deemed it as. And so the governments could continue to print and could continue to print if they so wanted to. And that gave them more opportunity to be able to help with economic times. But the issue with fiat currencies is that we are putting a lot of trust in the governments, and we are trusting the governments to be able to make responsible decisions for our currency and for the way that we are getting paid and the way that we are maintaining our wealth and the long-term cycles and long-term repercussions that come with that. So the reason that we look at the history of currency is to understand that now we are at the point where we are on a fiat currency. In 1971, when the US decoupled from gold, all the other nations did as well. And so what this means is all of the government-issued currencies in the world are not backed by anything simply than the government saying, we will not print or we will print. And so we can see how fiat currencies, like in places like Brazil, Argentina, Zimbabwe, these different nations that are going through tough economic times, they sometimes, to be able to compromise for that economic time, they continue to print money. And the more money that they print, that means that there's more dollars in the system, and that leads to inflation. And so inflation means that you will then have to pay more money to be able to afford that gallon of milk. So instead of it being $3, it might be $10 one day. And you're still getting paid the same amount that you are back on your salary because your employer still charges the same rates to their for projects. And so, of course, your salary isn't going to go up, but instead your cost of living is. And so then that typically pulls out from your savings. And our savings are also what helps us build wealth. So if we are pulling out of our savings, then it's less wealth accruement. And this is where it comes into fiat currencies. We are putting the trust in governments, in people, and laws, and it becomes very sticky in that situation. So people have asked the question with how do we create a currency that stores value, that maintains its wealth, and still allows us to be able to transfer across borders and allows it to be secure and immutable so that it won't be skewed. How do we do this? And so that's where it came to be that the question continued on, and it came into crypto, where now we are looking at decentralized agencies. And so decentralization means that we are looking at decentralized versus centralized. Centralized is what most of us are used to. It is one person. It is one central entity or one location that centralizes the power. So right now, how do you get your money? Well, you typically go to the bank or you put your ATM card into a bank and you trust that the money is going to come out because your bank account says that you have this much money. So you are putting the trust in your bank to say, I have this much money in my account and you will give it to me when I request it. Not everyone trusts that the bank will actually do that, or that they will make decisions that are in favor of you, or most importantly, that if you say that you want $10,000 out and the bank says, we're going to hold that up because that seems like a sketchy or an irregular transaction. And so they put it on hold when you say, but I really needed that money. Like I needed it now. So why can't you give me my money now? And so this is where when you start to play around with centralized entities, that you start to ask, do I actually trust these people? Do I trust the systems that our society is built on? And crypto comes back to the question of understanding the patterns that we run on in society, of how we deal with currency, how we transact, how we pull our wealth back out, and how we are able to accrue wealth long term. And so examples of centralized agencies are banks, PayPal, Venmo, brokers. So like if you're trading any stocks online or exchanges, they're all centralized because you rely on one central entity. However, crypto is decentralized. That is one of the things that makes it the essence and the special nature of it. Is now we are taking the trust, we are moving the trust from the one central entity, and we are moving it into code. So when crypto when a cryptocurrency is made, it is based on a set code, an algorithm of telling it how to operate. And depending on whatever use cases each token has, the code is written in a different way. So for example, I'm sure you might have heard of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin operates in loops where all you can do is send or buy, sell or buy. And then you can also send from account to account. But regardless, the way that Bitcoin works is that it works in loops where it is told, I will buy this, I will sell this, I will send it to this account, and it continues to operate on that loop and that cycle, so that the code isn't that complicated, but it is very secure and trusted. And that is why Bitcoin has been trusted by a lot of people over time. And you can see, especially in the news, in the price, how it is just going up and up because people are starting to build their trust into crypto. And so that is why there is a big hype around it right now. Next, the final thing about the third final thing about crypto that makes it super special and unique is how the transactions are created. And this is how the trust is built. And that is through blockchain technology. What blockchain is a way of confirming transactions onto a network. And so when I send money to Sally, then that record of me sending 2 Bitcoin, a lot of money right now if I were to be sending 2 Bitcoin to Sally, would be recorded on the blockchain in a block saying Whitney sends money to Sally, 2 Bitcoin, and it goes inside of that block. And then the block is created through solving a cryptographic puzzle to be able to secure those transactions and that information onto the blockchain. What makes a blockchain really unique is that this one new block that is created also pulls information from the past block. And it pulls its transaction ID. And that transaction ID is associated with the information that's in this block. So if you have information from this block in your future block that's being made, then that securely locks the 2 blocks onto the blockchain together and secures the information, because then when the next block is made into the future, once that block is made, the information from these 2 blocks are already locked in. So the reason that I mention this is because it helps prevent against hackers or people coming into the ecosystem and trying to mess up the information or change the information to better themselves. And so the transactions are confirmed through blocks on the blockchain, and they become immutable. And immutable means that the information cannot be changed, and they are now transparent because all of the blocks are shared across everyone in the blockchain. And this is done across the ledger. I'm throwing a lot of terms at you right now, but what I would love for you to remember for the ledger is that think about this as distributed accounting. So when someone has to manage their books, when some central entity manages their books, they rely on some software, some person going through line by line, keeping tabs on all of the lines. Now, the distributed accounting is not only kept with that one person, but instead it's spread across the network to everyone. So when you log on to an exchange to buy Bitcoin, you are able to look at all of the transactions of where they've been sent to, how much they've been sent, of how much has been sent. And the reason that they're able to include who it is because we have a very special, unique, a public key that doesn't describe your name at all. It's just a combination of letters and numbers. So going back to it, remember that when we are looking at crypto, we are looking at it being a currency. It's decentralized as the power is distributed across the network, and it's not stuck in one central entity to make decisions, and that's how trust is distributed. And then lastly, it is rooted in blockchain technology, which is a way that we build trust, because now transactions live on the blockchain. They're confirmed in there. They're solid, they're sound, they can't be changed, and they're transparent for everyone to see. So if everyone has information, the same information, then that makes it that much harder for someone to go in to actually try to change something, because we all have the same piece of information. All right, so now that we know what is crypto based on the currency, the decentralization aspect, and the blockchain, we are going to dive into why we have it. Okay, so this started back with Bitcoin. Back in 2009, actually, January 3rd, we just celebrated Bitcoin's birthday, big 12th birthday. Bitcoin was birthed by Satoshi Nakamoto, who is an unknown entity, but he created this because the question was asked. Let's see here. Let's refer back to the notes. The question was asked. The question was asked, how can we send money in a secure and immutable way to be able to unchain, to make it unchangeable, and make it a decentralized, unknown way. So this helps us send money across foreign borders with no restrictions, and it takes the entity of the government outside of it. So that now we are putting the trust simply in the code and not in the governments to be able to either regulate us, tax us, or whatever else we have. And so that is why we have it, is that people asked that question, and in 2009, Bitcoin came to be. Bitcoin, the reason that there's so much hype around it is because it was the first decentralized currency. And with it being its first decentralized currency means that more people were able to hop on board and say, I can see where the world is going. I trust this, I trust the code, and it helped build adoption. So when we take a look at the different types of cryptocurrencies, we try to ask ourselves, what are the value adds? Like, what are the use cases? Why are people adopting this? And what is the future of it? And so the reason Bitcoin is a front leader is because it was the first one to the game. And so now we look at what are the uses of cryptocurrency. And here we take a look that the cryptocurrency ecosystem is a very large one, and it can seem very daunting at times. But there are 2,000 tokens out there, and more than tokens, there are exchanges, there are different entities, and it can seem very overwhelming at times to even understand why certain people have invested in things, rather than just hearing whatever name of the hottest, latest coin that some person has jumped into. There have been different crazes around it, and this is where points of friction and failure come up, is having all of these coins that are underdeveloped, that don't have a strong technology, and sometimes the creators are not as sound themselves. And this is where we have a greater chance of failure to be able to happen with these many coins that are out there. And so the uses of cryptocurrency go back to it being a store of value. That was how Bitcoin initially came to be, is that not only could you store value, but you could trade it. You could trade it on the black market. You could trade it across borders. That's the unique thing, is you could hold it in a hard wallet, and you could hop on a plane to go from Peru to Bali, and no one would know that you had that much currency on you. It's an asset, but you know that you have it, and you can access it whenever you want to. So you are putting the power into yourself. The trust is in the code. It is out of the central entities, and it is in the blockchain space. The other uses so Bitcoin is one use, where you can store value. Think of Bitcoin as digital gold. It really is deaf, dumb, and blind. All you can do is buy and sell it. The other side of things is based on the different types of tokens that you hold. You can also build decentralized projects. And so that's when, if you've heard of Ethereum, which we'll dive into a later episode, we'll break down the difference between Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other tokens. And the greatest thing about Ethereum is that they ask the question of, how do we build a network that we can connect developers with a platform to be able to build out decentralized projects? So like, think about Apple coming along, how Apple created the App Store. They created the iPhone as the host, and then the App Store for developers to create apps to be able to put them on the iPhone. The beautiful thing about the App Store is that now it suddenly connected developers with a really easy way of building out their visions and giving greater utility to people. And so that's how Ethereum has also connected people with that ability, is it has given developers the opportunity to say, I have a vision. I want this project to be time locked. I want for my kids to be able to have access to their money in 30 years, but I don't want them to touch it. How do I do it with another way that's not making a bond, like a government issued bond? Oh, well, I can go into this DApp, this decentralized application that lives on Ethereum, and I can buy and lock their money up on there, so then the kids in the future can access it based on whatever codes and conditions you program it to do so. And so that's just one example of a decentralized project, but there's plenty more to come from that. Also on the blockchain space, you can also store data. So the future of blockchain will be using this for medical care, for government tech records and information. Financial institutions can be able to host their data on a decentralized agency, on a decentralized platform on the blockchain, and their information will be secure, it will be immutable, it can't be changed, and most importantly, it will be trusted. Also, business transactions can be made, they can be tracked, they can be secure, knowing that each timeline each step of the way is a guarantee. So now you can suddenly do business in Europe and with a place in India and not know the Indian people, but you can put trust in them because you've created a smart contract, you've created a contract on the blockchain to be able to tell them to release funds when these certain activities are done. And lastly, there's so many uses for blockchain and for crypto, but it helps move large amounts of money across foreign borders without anyone else's interaction. So, like I said, I'm just trying to run through these little tiny bite-sized pieces of videos and information to be able to help other women that are new to crypto, that are curious, and that want to start to take ownership of their investments. And the best way really to do that is by educating yourself and taking action. So during this time, please, like if you have your phone, open it up onto Notepad and start to jot down any cues, anything that came up that you're really curious about learning more about, because the best way once you start to learn this is to then go deeper into it and start doing some research of your own. See, like, where are you most curious about? What don't you trust about this technology that you do want to learn more about? And how can you continue to build that information so that now when you trust it, you can actually feel confident in investing it. And then once you can invest in it, the next step is saying that I can sleep soundly and securely and hold Bitcoin, I can hold Ethereum, I can hold whatever token I am and know that I trust what the plan is. It might not act that way, but I trust my own guts and my intuition and my education and my brains. And overall, that will help us become more empowered women to be able to take control of our future. So this was the first segment. This was a little trial period. I recorded this and I'm going to throw it up on YouTube. I'll share it with you guys in the Facebook group. If you're curious, feel free to reach out to me more. I plan on doing these little chats probably about once a week. So reach out to me if you want to be included on the next one. And I hope that you enjoyed this and you're able to take something away from it. Like I said, we're just trying to touch the broad surface of what crypto is before we dive deeper into the weeds. And like we said, we focused on what is crypto, why do we have it, and what are the use cases. So write down your questions, do some more research, and reach out to me if you have any more questions. but we will be meeting up more on here as well. So anyways, I hope you all enjoy your weekend. Thanks for hopping on the call today, and look forward to meeting up with you more. Anyways, bye-bye.